Hey everyone. So this is my first time recording a build rundown slash guide kind of content. So excuse me if my explanations are a bit clumsy. But I am making this because everyone is kind of shitting on Bloodmage, and deservedly so. Because it is kind of weak. But I am here with a Tri-Curse crit Hexblast Bloodmage build, which absolutely shreds mapping content. And in my opinion, it scales really well. I'm currently level 79, and as you can see, I'm clearing this breach here pretty comfortably, which is probably one of the tougher pieces of content in the game right now, because of how easily you get swarmed. But the main benefit of this build is how easily you're able to clear dense content. In fact, the build performs better the denser the content is, because of how Hexblast functions mechanically. It's able to shotgun enemies that are clumped together. There is a downside to this build though, which is that its single target damage is not particularly great, because you lose the shotgun leverage. As a result, as everyone who's played Bloodmage knows, if your single target damage on Bloodmage struggles, then you're just gonna have an even worse time, because how difficult it is to sustain your life costs on bosses. And even for me, I have full crit spec, and it is still impossible to sustain just sitting here spamming Hexblast on bosses. I leveled this character as a Spark Flame Wall Witch until about level 65. Then I switched to a Cold Bloodmage setup, and for anyone looking to level a Bloodmage, I highly recommend, just shout out to Pox here, his Cold Bloodmage setup is probably the way to go right now. My build currently has 3 Ascendancy points, and it is not playable until you get your 3rd point, because you need Sunder the Flesh. This build only really works if you have Sunder the Flesh, because Hexblast and pretty much all the Chaos spells have a base crit of, I think, 7%, which is awful. And Sunder the Flesh makes it so that all of my spells have a base crit chance of 15%. So effectively, it doubles my crit chance. And I might just portal out here, so I can give you guys a quick rundown and guide on how this build functions. So, quickly just for the mechanics of Hexblast, as you saw in that mini showcase I did earlier, I'm casting a kind of circle zone here, and every mob inside this zone, if they're cursed, explodes. And this explosion can overlap, which is why our clear is so powerful. Yeah. So the links I have, I think you can see I have the notepad up here. Let me just move it. The main skills I have, firstly, is Hexblast. Let's move it a bit all the way to the right. And I have it linked with Arcane Tempo, Considered Casting, and Chaos Mastery. Unfortunately, I don't think like Arcane Tempo and is a very great support gem. Maybe it is because you're self-casting all the time. But what I'm getting at is Hexblast has a really limited support gem option, and I think the main offender for this is actually Spell Echo. So I think Spell Echo is currently bugged on Hexblast. You can support Hexblast with Spell Echo, but it doesn't echo. So Spell Echo reduces the cast speed. You get a 30% less cast speed modifier, and it's supposed to echo once. But when I socket it in, you can see this is my cast speed. I'll click once. It doesn't echo. So I'm definitely getting the less cast speed, because this is my cast speed now. But it's not echoing. So that's -1 support gem there. And I would like to use Spell Echo, because it's really powerful, but I can't. Afterwards, we have our blasphemy setup. This is actually more important than the Hexblast setup, because it's what allows our Hexblast to actually work. And just for anyone who has a 5-link orb, so the Greater Jeweler's Orb, I'm not sure if I have one right now. I don't. But it's the next one in these series, so the Lesser Jeweler's Orb, and the next one is the Greater. Blasphemy is the more important one to upgrade if you do drop a Greater Orb, because as I mentioned, Hexblast doesn't really have good support gem options, so for now 3 is enough. Blasphemy on the other hand, you need to socket in 3 curses as a minimum. So obviously we are a tri-curse setup. We're using Doji's Damning for +1 curse. We're also getting +1 curse on our tree from Whispers of Doom. So at a minimum, 3 sockets, 3 links for the curses, and then +1 more, which is Magnified Effect. We want to increase the range of our Blasphemy. I was actually playing this before I got Doji's Damning with just 2 curses. So Temp Chains and Despair. It's okay, it functions pretty well. But when you do get this, you want to socket in Enfeeble as well. So Temp Chains slows the enemies around you. Enfeeble, it makes enemies do less damage. These are both survivability curses. And Despair reduces enemy chaos res, gives you more damage. Next up, Essence Drain. This is a utility skill for me. I have it socketed with Chaotic Freeze, Scattershot, and Chain. These 2 green gems are for spread, so it hits more enemies. And Chaotic Freeze is the important one. If any enemies are affected by the Essence Drain dot damage, then it allows chaos hit damage from other spells to inflict freeze. So I really cast this on tanky rares and bosses kind of, to allow us to freeze them. This leads into our next skills, Cast on Freeze, which I have linked with another Hexblast, this time linked with Conk Effect and Leverage. We don't care about the area on this is mainly a single target setup, so Conk Effect is useful here. Leverage is here because obviously the target is immobilized because they're frozen, and we get increased crit chance, which is good, because we're a Bloodmage and we need to generate more Blood Orbs. There is an option here of using Biting Frost instead, I think it's called. Yeah. So this consumes freeze to deal 50% more damage. However, I personally am not a fan of this setup, because firstly, I want the target to remain frozen when I'm casting Essence Drain, so mainly on bosses. If they remain frozen, I get more DPS uptime on my main skills. And secondly, I think I mentioned this already, but Leverage increasing crit chance is good because it helps us generate more Blood Orbs. And we can't really sustain our HP on bosses right now. We also have Dark Effigy here. This is a totem that bombards enemies that are afflicted by your Chaos dots. So it only hits them if you have Essence Drain procced on them, and you support it with Withering Touch here, just to stack up with her faster. And I also have Font of Mana, and Ironwood supports these are utility. Font of Mana gives me a bit of mana regen. Ironwood helps keep the totem alive. There is an option of replacing Ironwood here with Font of Blood. This gives you a bit of regen. I don't think it's too useful. If you can see here, like, my regen is pretty much nothing right now. I have no sustain. And if I spec in Font of Blood, my totem kind of gives me a little bit of regen. Although I don't find this to be very helpful either, because like it doesn't really help sustain. If I need the health back, I just press my health loss, which tops me up. So I prefer keeping the totem alive with Ironwood. Next up, Lightning Warp. I throw this in here just for a little bit of utility while mapping. This lets you cull enemies, kind of like stragglers, and it leaves a shocked ground area, which lets you do more damage to other enemies that are still alive. So I kind of like use this in a breach. If there's one straggler, you proc it, everything else around you takes more damage. I have it supported with Life Drain, Soul Drain. It's a little bit of recovery, not particularly useful, but there's no other better supports, and I have enough dex requirement right now. These are reservations, I think Grim Feast is really strong. I think it's mandatory for any build that utilizes Energy Shield. That gives you a lot of sustain during mapping, and not only does it give you sustain, it allows you to overflow your ES, and we know how powerful that is from overflowing life as a Bloodmage. Next up, Blink. I like Blink. I like Blink a lot. I think the game is kind of unplayable for me without it. A hot tip, before I had enough Spirit to permanently activate Blink, what I would do is I would toggle off Cast on Freeze. So like, I'll have Blink here, turned off, and normally my Cast on Freeze is on while I fight. But if I need to backtrack, I turn this off, I turn this on, and you see, like, imagine I was minus 60 Spirit, so it all fits, and I just backtrack with Blink up. And then when I'm done backtracking, I just swap back. But yeah, now I have Blink on permanently. I really, really like the skill. And lastly, we have Withering Presence. I think this is a no-brainer for any Chaos Space damage build. It's just more damage aura. There's also a few innate skills. I have 4. The Chaos Bolt comes from my wand. This skill is not a very good skill, in my opinion. But it has utility in a Bloodmage, simply because it costs 0 mana. And because it costs 0 mana, it also costs 0 health. So as a Bloodmage, I can kind of just spam it. And I have it linked with Unleash, Inevitable Crit, Execute, and Fork. The main purpose of Chaos Bolt is to hit the enemy multiple times to try and crit them, to try and generate Blood Orbs to help with my health sustain. That's why Unleash and Inevitable Crit are there. There's no real good other options, so I have Execute there to help with targets that are on low life. It actually does a decent amount of damage if they are on low life. So on bosses, if they're like 35% or less, I tend to use the skill a bit more. And Fork is just there to help hit more. There's no real good other support. I think there's Extraction. You can actually use Extraction on either Chaos Bolt or Hexblast. But I find sustaining the health cost from this is just too much. Because firstly, like for Chaos Bolt, the main reason you want to use the skill gem at all is to help generate life back. So like, if I'm killing myself or trying to generate my life back, it's kind of counterintuitive. And if I put this on Hexblast for damage, it's barely like more damage than Chaos Mastery, and it makes my life cost go even worse. Oh wait, that was Chaos Mastery. Yeah, so as a comparison, that was Chaos Mastery, now Extraction. It drains me much faster. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this gem right now. I can't sustain it, even though it's a good amount of damage. Next up, Malice. This comes from my Sceptre. This is really, really important because this gives you an aura that inflicts critical weakness, which stacks up base crit chance on enemies that are near you. And as a Bloodmage, playing a crit build, crit chance is absolutely important for damage and for health sustain. I have it linked with Persistence. You can link Persistence to other gems as well, but I think it's most important on this just to increase crit chance. Sigil of Power is on my offhand. I don't really press this that often, and it's not that important. But I did drop this Scepter, which is really powerful actually. But I have no way to fit this in on my main hand, because I do need a Scepter for my offhand. Sorry, did I say Scepter earlier? I meant Staff. But it comes with Sigil of Power. So what I did is, you can actually toggle all of these gems, so my main gems, to only activate with with weapon set 1. Like, for example, my Hexblast here. You use with weapon set 1. And so, if I press Sigil of Power, you can see I switch to my Staff. But when I click Hexblast, it automatically switches back to my main weapon. So it just lets me have Sigil of Power for free pretty much, which gives a pretty decent damage boost to my Hexblast. So I'll re-trigger it. You can see I can stack up the Sigil to like, it's a lot of more damage. Maybe like 30 to 40% more damage. I think my base amount, yeah, 17k. So you click this occasionally during boss fights, that's about it. And Life Remnants, this is the skill that comes with Bloodmage. love-hate relationship skill. I have Herbalism and Clarity socketed in. I think Clarity is mandatory. You need some help with mana still as a Blood Mage, which is kind of sad. And Herbalism is actually really, really nice, but when you're on low life, it gives your Life Flask a lot more potency. So like, this is my Life Flask with Herbalism. And I will showcase without Herbalism. You can see it is significantly slower. Yeah. Now for the gear. So the most important pieces are the scepter and the amulet. So I fixed it on my notes, which was a bit incorrect earlier. It's at 83%. But if you look at the spirit breakpoints, it now says 84% scepter. So on this scepter, there are two roles you can have for spirit. One is a combined mod with mana, and one is a just flat increased spirit roll. And combined, you want at least 84%, well 84%. And if you quality up to 20%, and you have an amulet with 46 plus 46 of spirit, you can fit in all of the reservations that I have. So you can see I have 1 spirit remaining. It's because my amulet is 47 spirit. If you can't do this, so if you don't have a spirit amulet, you can drop Link, and then you'll have let me take my amulet off. You have 14 spirit remaining, and in this case, your scepter can go down to 73% increased spirit, and if you quality up to 20%, you can fit in everything minus Blink. So these are the two options. You can also tinker with your own spirit requirements, and then maybe like drop Herbalism or Clarity, but I don't recommend it. I recommend trying to hit at least the 73% scepter breakpoint. And the other thing to note is it must be an Omen Scepter, because the Omen Scepter is what gives us Malice. I mentioned this earlier in the skill section. Malice is really, really powerful for our build, and all the other scepters, the innate skills they give, are absolute trash. They don't do anything for our build. And the amulet, what you are looking for is the 46 spirit, as well as some other beneficial mods. So plus level to spell skills is the other main one. There's also cast speed and flat life. You can also throw in resistances, and I think it's generally what you're looking for. For me, I found this on trade for a pretty good price. I think it was 15 exalts. And yeah, I value rarity quite a bit as well on my gear, because I think it helps a lot with your loot drops. So yeah, 29 rarity, life spirit, spell skills. I don't have any other mods on my amulet. Before I was using a simple plain like +2 amulet with nothing else on it, and I had a 73 scepter back then. The weapon, just look for as much damage as you can. I actually think +4 to chaos spell skills is not that great. If you can, you should scale damage through other vectors, because like right now with +4 in, my Hexblast costs 210 mana and consequently 210 life. If I take this off, it almost halves to 128. So even though like it's powerful, it gives you a lot of damage, it also like really screws up your health and mana costs. So I think what is actually better, is it a suffix? Yes, it is. Maybe like spell crit bonus or spell crit chance is probably a better mod, even though it'll give you less damage. But yeah, the mods you're looking for, damage as extra, I think spell damage, chaos damage, spell skills, gem levels, obviously, cast speed, and any crit chance mod for spells. Next, this helmet. This helmet is really good, actually. I dropped this myself. I think I exalted on life, and then I socketed in Chaos Res. Chaos Res is really important. So I was dying a lot until I got my Chaos Res up to like 48%. And even now, it still feels really bad, because Chaos damage does double damage to Energy Shield. So you really, really want to cap your Chaos Res as a build that runs Energy Shield. So I was running around on 23 earlier, and yeah, it felt horrible. So I honestly think like Elemental Res at 50% is good enough, and then after that focus on Chaos Res. That's the helmet. Life resists and Energy Shield. Same with body. Life resists, Energy Shield. You probably want to get more ES on your gear, but I'm playing what I have right now. The rings, Dority's Damney. This is mandatory. The resistances and mana per enemy kill rolls are actually pretty variable, and I think the mana per enemy kill, you really want this at least like 8 or something, because it helps a lot with mana sustain during mapping. And the resists, yeah, no need to comment there. Just want it as high as possible. The other ring is just life resists, a little bit of rarity. I think I also dropped this myself, and I exalted on life. Pretty good. These 3 pieces are pretty trash. My belt is just life and 1 resist, but the implicit is 20% of flask recovery applied instantly. I think this mod is really powerful. If anyone has played PoE 1 knows instant life flasks. You can see. Yeah. I think it's really powerful. It's probably why I haven't upgraded this yet. These boots, 30% move speed and 1 resist. I dropped these as well. They have a dex requirement, which is really annoying for me, because it locks me into these gloves, which gives me dex. Otherwise I can't wear these boots. So these 2 pieces I probably want to upgrade soon. But yeah, as you can see, I can't wear these boots without these gloves. I think that is it for the gear. It's pretty simple, honestly. The only important pieces are the amulet, the scepter, and the ring. Obviously the wand. Also for the wand, make sure you get a withered wand base type. I think the other wand bases, the skills they give are not very useful. Chaos Bolt, at least we're scaling chaos damage with the Chaos Bolt, and it helps us stack life orbs when we crit with it. So yeah, make sure you get a withered one. And I think I mentioned earlier, the offhand, get a staff. It doesn't really need any mods at all. Just have high level sigil of power, so you can click it whenever you want. Yeah, let's move on to the passive tree. Let's move this out onto the side. So, if you look at the scaling vectors note section, we are looking for crit chance and crit bonus as our most important stat. And so for our tree, we're pretty much pathing towards all the crit chance nodes. And thankfully, all the crit chance nodes seem to be bundled together with chaos. You can see here like crit chance and chaos, crit chance here and chaos. So we path out for, through the spell damage section. There's actually a few options here. I'm spell damage right now because, firstly, I don't need the attributes. So you can take these attribute nodes if you're low on attributes of any kind. And secondly, I think these ES nodes are really powerful, except as you can see, my ES pool is 560 right now, so it's pretty low. So these percent increased energy shield nodes are not very efficient on my build right now. So I'm valuing these spell damage nodes a little bit more, just for the moment. And I will note that if you take these attribute nodes here, it puts you 1 point closer to these 2 notables, Spiral Insanity and Spiral Mania, which I think are really powerful. But right now, I can't afford to click them. You path up here, cast speed, crit chance. For the crit chance notables, a lot of them have like an option to path to it through crit spell bonus or crit hit chance. I'm not sure which one is better. You can see like sometimes I do bonus. Sometimes I do bonus here, sometimes I do crit chance. There is a thing with our Ascendancy, which Gore Spike gives us a lot of critical damage bonus. And critical damage bonus, it scales additively with itself and multiplicatively with critical hit chance. But the thing with Gore Spike is, I think it's currently bugged. I'm not sure if it's just a tooltip bug or if it's actually mechanically bugged. But as you can see, 1% increased crit damage bonus per 40 life. And so let's look at my Hexblast tooltip here. Let me just make sure my notes aren't blocking. So here, you can see the crit damage bonus, 258%. And my helmet is giving me 154 life, which is about 3 or 4% crit damage bonus based on my Ascendancy. So if I take it off, you should expect this to go down by 3 or 4. But yeah, nothing changes. So because of this, I'm not sure, but at 2k life right now, my tooltip is missing about 50 crit bonus. So even though crit spell damage bonus is a better tooltip increase than crit hit chance, I'm not sure which one is actually better, if it's not bugged. And the other thing is, the way this reads, it says per 40 life, not per 40 maximum life, which makes me think that it also works with Bloodmage's overflow life. So if you overflow life, this gives you more crit damage bonus. But again, it's bugged and I don't know for sure. But in that case, I can get up to like 100 crit damage bonus with my current life total, which I'm pretty sure means the crit chance is better. Because the other thing is, crit chance is kind of like a threshold thing. Because if I'm clearing packs and my Hexblast crits, which is, it's currently 58% base, and about 60-70% when my Malice stacks up. If it crits, it kind of kills the entire pack, but if it doesn't crit, it leaves a few stragglers around. So getting more crit chance instead of crit bonus is also kind of like a feels better thing, in that it just helps with clear speed. But obviously crit damage bonus is probably just better for single target. And one other thing, increasing crit chance, it helps with Blood Orb sustain. So as long as the Gore Spike works properly, I probably will end up pathing only through crit chance. But at this moment, I'm unsure. So you path here through the crit, path up for more crit. Void is a really strong notable, take it. Up here, Master of Hexes. I just realized. I'm not showing the tree properly. Probably covered a lot. So here, Master of Hexes. We are scaling 3 curses with this, so it's really, really efficient. And then up here, Whispers of Doom. This is mandatory for the build. Pick up more crit along the way. I think these int nodes are really efficient because 33 int, it translates to 33 strength, because I can like unspec int on the pathing nodes and switch it to strength. And that gives me more life. So 33 int is equal to 33 strength, which is equal to about 60 life. Path down here, crit, chaos. You also want Wither Away eventually, but I don't have the points right now. And down here as well, you want Royal for the area. I think this is mandatory. It makes the build feel really good. Potent Incantation, also really strong. I think it gives a lot of more damage, because I don't have a lot of increased damage actually. Actually I do, but it's still good. Even though the reduced cast speed is there, it gives a DPS boost, and reducing cast speed is actually not that bad, because it reduces your life cost per second. And down here, Insightfulness. I have this clicked for the mana regen, but now that I think about it, it's not particularly efficient, because it gives max ES as well. And as I mentioned, I'm not pathing through the ES here, because I don't really have a lot of ES. So honestly, for the mana regen, I should probably unspec these and take these 4 points instead, because Arcane Blossom is a lot more efficient just for mana purposes. Crit Exploit, no brainer, crit. Zone of Control, really powerful, mandatory. It increases the blasphemy size by a lot, and it also lets your curses hinder enemies, which is another layer of survivability. And in addition to that, it activates hindered capabilities. So this is just another increased damage vector, and it also increases the slow magnitude of the hinder that Zone of Control gives you, and also the slow magnitude from temp chains. Lastly, we path here. These 4 points are kind of ugly, but you can't skip these crit nodes, they're just too strong. And Event Horizon. Lose 3% is fine, because 3% in addition to like what we're already paying is not that much, and on Chaos Bolt it's barely noticeable. I wouldn't click Spaghettification though at the current moment. I think this node is really strong, except I can't justify minus Chaos Res when I'm currently at 48% Chaos Res, because I feel like 48% is still too low. So that is why I'm not clicking Spaghettification. I mentioned the pathing here is a bit ugly. Like, I can have 2 links here to path to connect here, or maybe 2 links here, but I'm doing 2 links here. And technically this is a 3 link, but jewel sockets are really, really, really powerful. All my jewels are at least 3 mod jewels. So if you can see this, crit spell damage bonus, mana regen, and area effect of curses. This area of effect of curses is really strong. It rolls up to 25%, and I have a few of these in my tree. So curse area here, curse area here, and like blasphemy at its base level with curses is about an area of this size. But at my current amount of increased area, let me just move this to the other side again. At my current increased area, the aura skills I have a curse radius of about 6.3 meters. That translates to about this. So anything that steps within this zone gets cursed, and then I can activate my Hexblast. So it's pretty much ranged on your Hexblast. But I will say though, I think I went a bit overkill on the area of effective curses, because generic area of effect also affects this radius, but in addition to that, it affects the radius of our Hexblast. So the Hexblast has a primary radius of 3.4. This is like the target seeking radius. Anything within this radius explodes. and then the explosion radius is 1.9. You want to scale both of these as well to make the clear feel a bit better. So I think I will eventually replace some of these with generic area of effect jewels. Other good mods for the jewels, I think this doesn't have any area. Any crit bonus for jewels is good. Chaos damage is good, spell damage is good, area damage if it exists. I'm not too sure. Mana regen is really good. There is also increased maximum energy shield, which is good if you have a lot of ES. For me, it's not actually that great, but I will scale into it eventually. There's also cast speed, which is pretty good, but I couldn't find any. Yeah, I think that is it for the tree. I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm not too happy about the pathing on the top, but I don't think there's any way to fix it at this point in time. I think pure chaos, and I think having these crit and chaos nodes bundled together makes like the extra 4-point pathing here a bit more comfortable, because it's technically like 2 points for a notable wheel, and 2 points here for a notable wheel, which is not too bad when you think about it. Onto the Ascendancy points. So we must take Sun of the Flesh. This is what the build kind of revolves around, and the build is also not really playable until you get Sun of the Flesh, because Hexblast has a base crit chance of 7%, and that is pretty awful. I think the cold spells have either 12 or 13%, lightning about 9 or 10, and so Sun of the Flesh for chaos spells will more than double the crit chance, while for cold spells it's like a very minimal increase. Ghost Spike I already talked about. You have to take this as well. It's a very strong node. 100% increased crit damage bonus if it works properly with Overflowed Life is a lot. But I think it's currently bugged. Sanguinmancy, you must take this. I think it is strong. And the thing I have to note about this is that do not spec Vitality Siphon. Like, just ignore this node. I think either the leech is currently bugged, or leech is just so weak that it heals for almost nothing. Like, the idea with Vitality Siphon is that you can leech your life back to help sustain the cost of your spells. Except it can't even sustain the cost of spells right now. And in addition to that, the other drawback is, if you haven't noticed, I have no form of life recovery spec'd anywhere on my tree. Or on my gear. The only life recovery I have is from Herbalism. Because life recovery does not apply to your overflowed life. So this leech would not help you overflow your life. So the only life recovery I'm using right now is life remnants. And this skill is so powerful, that's why GGG had to add the downside alongside with this. So, yeah, let me reiterate again, do not spec Vitality Siphon. This node is awful, like as it works currently mechanically. Like, even if it's fixed, even if leech is fixed, I still think this is bad. I think, yeah. So my last 2 points, it's probably going to be Grasping Wounds. This is the Progenesis effect. It was really strong in PoE 1. I think it's going to be equally as strong in PoE 2. There's an argument for maybe Blood Barbs. It's kind of like 10% more damage if you have no other damage as extra, but I think it's pretty weak. It also, we also can't really crit because this is elemental damage, but we're doing chaos. But I will maybe experiment with this, but it is probably Grasping Wounds for the last Ascendancy points. So I want to just add a note on the mechanics of Hexblast. So how Hexblast works, let me just play this clip for you.
Hexblast can be cast on cursed enemies to remove a curse and cause a chaos explosion. If a monster has multiple curses, all of them will be detonated.
So you can see in the clip, when there's multiple curses, both of them visually detonate, and this works for my current setup as well. I have 3 curses, and when I go into map, I think if you go into the introduction showcase, you'll be able to see that all 3 of the curses detonate every time I Hexblast. The thing is though, through my testing, I'm not sure if this is supposed to do like double damage with 2 curses or triple damage with 3 curses, but it seems to be doing the same amount of damage whether or not you have 1 curse or 2 curses or 3 curses. But visually, all of the curses detonate. The tooltip is also not clear if it does more damage per curse or not, but yeah, if it's supposed to do triple the damage with 3 curses, then I think this build is a lot more powerful than it is right now. But I don't think it is doing more damage currently. So yeah. And also, another note on leveling. I leveled this until level 65 with Spark Flame War. I think Cold is better after you get Cast on Freeze Comet. Otherwise, until then, I think Lightning is actually the best way to level, contrary to what most people say. I really dislike the early Cold spells. So Spark Flame War with Arc on Unleash is the way to go for this. But when you switch to Cold, I recommend Pox's Cold Bloodmage guide. It's very clean and very efficient, very well written, and it's the best way to play Cold Bloodmage right now. Also, since this build is not playable until our third Ascendancy point, you need to get this somehow. The third Ascendancy is quite hard, and it's not. Well, maybe it is, and it's a skill issue, but I couldn't do this as a Lightning Bloodmage. I just could not pass the Ascendancy. But when I switch to Cold, being able to freeze everything in Trial of the Seconders is very helpful. So I would recommend anyone trying to do the Ascendancy to do it as Cold Bloodmage. And I mentioned that this build kind of suffers with single target, so I will throw in a boss showcase at the end of this video. Thanks for watching, everyone.